Right, morning guys. So now we've just rolled. I should have really have done a video log of it, but you've all seen me do pop-ups before, so I thought it may be a little bit pointless me doing it. You've seen me do them before. But then after I'd done it, I thought, you ain't seen me done a wafter mix before. I should really have done that from start to finish. But I forgot, but bait's pretty much rolled now. I've got every bait I need now for River Valley. It's I wanted some wafters. I've got a tub of banoffee pop-ups, which is the bait that I know is going to really do the business on this. So I do like them as a pop-up, them not as a wafter. Now it's because I will be fishing crumb mainly over all the rods, to be honest with you, even with the banoffee, but I will have quite a few old baits over that banoffee. But with the fish meal baits, I will more than likely be fishing crumb with just the odd. Say if I put 2 kilo of crumb out, I'll probably only use a kilo of all baits in 48 hours. Because I do like to get them fish when they're on when they're feeding on crumb. I think that they stay more at that angle with the crumb, and they'll stay more at that angle when they're feeding at the crumb. Where with boilers, they'll go down and they tend to top up to feed on bait, and then they'll chew it and then swallow it and then it's back down again. And that's how you nail them faster with pop-ups is they'll go down, pick all bait up and then right themselves to chew it, and it's as they right themselves that they'll hit that lead and it's game over for them really. But what I've noticed since I've been feeding fish meal baits through winter is, especially over crumb. Now I've been doing a lot with crumb over past year, since the beginning of COVID. It's been since the beginning of COVID, about 2 years. I've been doing a hell of a lot with crumb, and I will be doing a hell of a lot more with it as well, because I absolutely love the fish's reaction to it. Now we're up a tree over there and I was watching them for about going on 2 hours, and they were drifting in, and they were I couldn't quite. What I'd done is I'd baited the margin, but I've said this in another blog. I've baited just off the marginal shelf. Now it's not a big marginal shelf. It's probably 2 foot of water, but then it gradually slopes down to around 4 foot. 3.5, 4 foot of water. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to pull them out of that really shallow water, what's around 2 foot, because obviously they can easily be seen if someone walks down there. But to be honest with you, more people are, when they go down and fish up straight out of there anyway. But it's even that when they spook out and they leave that swirl, I didn't even want that. So what I did is, at the beginning, I fed them on that marginal slope at the top of it where they could be seen. And then I've gradually put bits of bait in that margin, but then I've slowly added it further and further out. And now the bait is on a marginal shelf, and those fish, they're still not doing what I want them to do, I will be honest with you, but no ever does go according to plan like that when it comes to feeding cod. They're unpredictable. So what they're doing is they're liking the overhang of the trees, and it must give them some kind of they feel safe there. So and even the coots won't move them. The coots sometimes goes mad over them, but they still don't move. They still stay there, and they're nice. Some of them are all right fish. They're not big. They're treat and size fish, about 16, 17 pound. But it's definitely starting to work with them feeding, because they keep drifting out of there and dropping down that slope, and then you'll get a big smoke up. Now, if you're stood at bank level looking, you can't see it. You've got to get up the tree very quietly, and then they'll spook out. When you get up the tree, they'll spook out. Now, you may have to be up that tree for an hour and a half, 2 hours before they'll eventually drift back in. And it's not this way they're coming in margin-wise. But you will get the odd fish that does come up slow, the bigger fish. So now when I were up tree, it was absolutely smoking, and I mean to the point that there was a big plume of silt where they were feeding. Now I saw one of them feeding. I saw one of them feeding on the crumb, and it was absolutely mullering it, and you could see the odd full bait there. And every so often, it was the smaller fish that were taking the fuller baits. Now, all the time it was feeding on the sill, all you could see was it at that angle. But I couldn't see its head, I could just see its tail. And it was like that for ages and ages, and they were just big plumes of smoke. So that's with the fish meal baits. Now, the fish meal baits, it's something I've not done much, but this year I'm going to rectify that, and it's definitely getting sorted. So I was going to go with KBS as well. I was going to go with the krill, belacan and shrimp, but then I thought to myself, the last time I went, I fished to Meadow Lake when I had the small common. No, it was not a small common. It was the fully scaled. I fished over KBS, but I fished it with a liver and shrimp pop up over the top of that KBS, and that's what resulted in majority of fish I had that day. Even the big common fell over that KBS crumb. So it's these are the baits that I've actually rolled for when I start on the River Valley. It's a 14mm round, 14mm krill, not krill, sorry, 14mm liver, shrimp, and crayfish wafters. Now I've rolled, the reason for the wafters, guys, and they're beautiful baits, they really are beautiful baits. Now the reason for the wafters, like I said, is just from those fish feeding on that crumb and not moving from that angle. So I thought if I went with a wafter, now these will still pop up, but with a swivel and a size 6 ridge monkey, they sink ever so slowly, and I mean really slowly, beautifully, to be honest with you. But I will use a little bit more putty than what someone would normally use with a wafter, because I don't like all that when fish come in and your bait starts doing that. It's unnatural, and it just to me, it must be a sign to them, like, leave that alone, it is dodgy. It will go because they're not that bright. No fish is that bright. I don't care what they say on television. No fish is that bright. I've watched them thousands and thousands of hours, and they ain't that bright. It's they will, but stuff like when your bait's doing that, it's a surefire sign that it is not. It's not acting naturally. So I don't mind that with them when they just do that, because when a fish comes in and it's feeding over baits, you will see baits bouncing all over, but you never see them doing that because of the line that's connected to your rig. So I went with these liver. The liver pop-ups. Now I absolutely love these liver baits. Honestly, they smell. I hate liver. I always have since I've been a kid. But they smell really subtle. You can get the crayfish, and the other thing as well is the reason for the addition of crayfish, and they're a little bit smaller than normal these as well, guys. 14 mils. It's which I'm really liking. I will be honest with you, I'm really liking. Now the pop-up mixers that I'm doing at the minute, they're really super buoyant, so it's not a 50-50 mix, a pop-up mix and bottom bait mix. It just doesn't work. It does not work out it that way. You will still end, if you use a 50-50 mix and my pop-up mix, and you use a 50 mix or a bottom bait mix, you will still end up with a pop-up. You just do. But I would rather have them a little bit over buoyant than under buoyant. Then a little bit over buoyant than one that just automatically just sinks down, and then it may just I would rather have them so I can suit each rig. Now, after a little bit overboiling, I can trim them down. And I'm feeding crumb and flake and chops. So a bit chopped down, it really makes no difference to me at all. I would rather do that anyway, you know what I mean? So I just chop them down a little bit so they just sink with the weight of the putter, but they do sink with the swivel and thing like I said earlier on, and the RM tape from Ridge Monkey size 6s. So they sink perfectly with them. Now I'm pretty much there with everything now, to be perfectly honest with you. And now it's just a waiting game. Now, most people will be looking at weather today and thinking it's pretty good, and it is pretty good. It is pretty good. But I don't just want to go down there and start fishing just for a day and then perhaps knock off for 2 weeks. When I go down there, I want to hit it full. And it's going to be round about the second week in March that I start. Once I start in that second week of March, then there's no stopping it. It's constantly, it's a weekly thing. So yeah, that's where we're at with them. But I'm really am liking these. Now there's going to be a few spare tubs of pop-ups that I've got, if anybody, because obviously I'm getting so many out of one egg mixers because the eggs I'm using are big, so I'm getting so many out of a one egg mix. There's always 2 tubs in there with round about 60-65 pop-ups per tub. So if anyone's wanting any, I have got some pop-ups, and I have also got, I think there'll be a tub of these wafters. Looking at them, there'll probably be a tub of these wafters as well. Now honestly, you can actually see, if you look at that there, you can actually see the bits of crayfish in it. Now, Rother Valley, a lot of people have said to me over years, there ain't no crayfish in Rother Valley. There is. I brought them in. I've actually brought the rig in, and I've had crayfish actually holding onto the bait. I've brought them in and they've been on my line. So, and I've also seen them in the head. But the majority of them are our native crayfish, not the red signals. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's not red signals in there, because there's definitely red signals in River Rother, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. Nah. So, and that means if there's crayfish in there, the carp are definitely eating them, because it's a massive food source, is crayfish. Now, with these, I could have got a crayfish powder with the shell in, but the shell in the ones that I can get, it's just a little bit too big, and it's all really from seeing the reaction to the fish when I had eggshell in my baits once. I once had eggshell in my baits, and a slight little bit must have been sticking out of one side of it. Now, when you looked at the baits, you couldn't see it until this happened, and I put a rig in the margin, and a fish went down on the bait, and the minute it got it in its mouth, the minute it sucked it in, it panicked. It straight back out, and it panicked, and it was gone. Now, when I brought that bait in, I looked at everything. I thought, what? There was something wrong with rig. What? Why did it react like that? It weren't until I went like that with the bait that I felt the sharp bits of egg sticking through the side of it, and I am convinced that it was that spooked that fish off that margin, off that spot that time. It was a lovely fish as well, but it spooked it. It spooked it in a big style as well. It felt the sharpness of the eggshell. Let's not forget that it's, you see, I didn't quite understand it, because obviously when they're eating crayfish shell, there's got to be sharp bits in that, but it's, in my opinion, it's a totally different thing altogether. It's a round bowl that is just it, to the venues I fish that aren't heavily fished. These really are, especially when I very first started fishing treating, you were lucky if you saw 3 or 4 people on there a week. So it's not a lot of bait were going in. they did match fish it, but not a lot of bait were going in at all, and that was through me watching people on there. They just never ever put bait in. They'd put the rigs out and then they'd catapult a few boilies in. Bag was zipped up and it were in the bivvy, and if I were fishing outside them, every time I heard a noise I looked and there were no bait. They never put bait in. The odd time they'd put odd catapult out, but not very often. So that tells me that these are probably still looked on as a little bit. They're just starting to get, more than likely, just starting to get to because people are using a decent baits down there now. You know what I mean? A lot of them are using decent baits like with krill and bloodworm and shrimp and all that kind of stuff in, like RG baits and stuff like that. There's some guys using RG baits down there. Some guys using sticky baits, and they're giving off food signals of what's in there. Bloodworm. There's obviously no krill in there. It needs salt to survive, but there's shrimp in there, natural shrimp. So they're giving it. These are giving off natural attraction in the form of the crayfish meat. Also in the shrimp, which is it's a fresh mix of freshwater shrimp and a shrimp from saltwater. Now I wanted that salt in there for really for. I like salt. I like salt in my bait. I love salt. And if you've been watching my blogs, you know I love salt. So they've got a bit of salt in there, so they're getting that natural attraction off. So the carp are definitely. It's not that they're looking at that and seeing a food source. It's the attraction it's letting off, the amino acids that are leaking from it, which is the base mix from this is a base mix that I've come up with now, and probably took me the longest to make that base mix for Wafters than it's took me to make any other base mix I've ever made. And it's the simple reason is I want it to be a high leakage base mix, one that once it's in the water, it's not got that much in it that it just leaks off all that flavour from it. Now this definitely does that. So it's just a case of continuing doing what I'm doing. It's like I said earlier on in another post as well. I have now stopped with the fish that I was talking to you about earlier on, about the ones on River Valley, on Treaton, that with the marginal drop off. Now I've stopped baiting that spot, but that's not to say that I'm not going to bait it again. It's just I ain't going to bait it for a while. For the simple reason of the last time I went down there were two guys very much near to the area we were fishing. Now it's on any other water that I'd fish. If I saw that someone were baiting a spot, then I stay clear of them areas, because it's just like angling. It's just something I've always done. If I know someone's baiting up somewhere, and I won't sneak on there either. I won't go down and say, oh no, I won't fish it, and then sneak down a couple of days later when I know that kid's not going to come down and put rods out. You're ruining his hard work, so it's not something I do. So the reason I stopped baiting it is when I saw those guys further down, and I had a chat to them, they talked about that they were going to move up there. So instantly, that day I was going to bait. Instantly the bait stopped straight away. So I walked down and I had a look in the margin where I've been seeing them. And you can see the odd fleck of of hemp. You can still see the odd little piece of hemp if you look close enough. So that's how close I was baiting. Now it's gone. Everything's gone. Everything's gone. Now the coots and everything's onto it now. They all know about it. But it were definitely carp that were doing the majority of their eating that food. So that, like I said, that baiting stopped. But it is going to get continued. Next time I go down there, I will be still continuing to bait that spot. We're coming up to the time of year now as well when we're I know exactly where those fish are going to be on Treaton. I know where they're going to be, and I also know where they're going to be on River Valley. So it's a funny one, you know what I mean? But it just depends really if lads have been baiting heavily on Rother Valley, but even if they have been baiting heavily, take my word for it, I know where them fish are going to be, especially the bigger ones and the wiser fish. I know where they're going to be, and it's a place they've been every single year since I've known about the place around about March time. So it's going to get some more bait, but it's not going to get none yet because I put a fair few kilo in that corner at Rother Valley now, so that's going to get left alone for a little bit. But I'm really happy with them, and that's the final piece in the jigsaw, guys. So now we're set. Like I said, there is a spare tub of these, so if anyone wants a spare tub, the few guys that have messaged and said I will do bait for, then you're welcome. I will do you a tub of them. I think there's going to be a tub spare anyway. I should think so. So I'll check you later, guys. So check you.